Well, welcome to this short reflection, which is one of a series that we're offering for Holy Week in 2020, a time when we find ourselves in the most unexpected of circumstances. I hope that each of them, looking briefly at the lectionary reading from John's Gospel for the day, will help you discover something of God's presence as you journey through it. At the end of each, after a brief prayer, I invite you to simply spend some time in quiet reflection, using the words of a very simple song by Sam Hargreaves, Jesus, Lead Us to the Father.
It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel round his waist. After that he poured water into a basin, and began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him.
This is a story of deliberate contradiction. Jesus knew. He knew his hour had come. He knew he would be betrayed. And he knew that God had placed all things into his hands. So what would you do? What would I do if I knew all those things were true of me? Jesus, aware of all his power and authority when everything can be in his hands, chooses to take into those hands the tools of the trade of the lowliest servant, the foot washer, the menial nobody that could normally be ignored. And then the story goes on to speak of the awkward encounter with Peter. He just cannot cope with it. He cannot remain silent when Jesus is doing what he's doing. Perhaps to his credit, he more than others recognised Jesus for who he truly was, which made it only worse that he should now be confronted by his God and Redeemer, stooping before him, ready to remove the filth of the road from his aching feet. This wasn't the way he wanted Jesus to engage with him. He wanted to be doing for Jesus. There's almost a retelling of the story of Mary and Martha here. I should be washing your feet, Lord, don't wash mine. And the question that Jesus asks is, do you want to be busy doing for me? Or do you want to receive what I offer? It wasn't that long ago that Peter had seen Jesus in a setting far more fitting to the one who held all things in his hands. Transfigured on a mountaintop, flanked by Moses and Elijah, his divine nature and true identity inescapably revealed. That was a Jesus that Peter could cope with, a Jesus to be admired and exalted from a distance, a Jesus who fitted the mould of his cultural expectations. But Jesus comes in a way that he could never have anticipated. Probably in the last way anyone would have expected. And even when confronted with the challenge to accept what Jesus offers, he still struggles to relinquish control. Then wash me all over, Lord. Clumsy, crudely expressed words, but revealing a sentiment of heart that we are all called to show. But Peter has to be content to let Jesus call the shots. No, just your feet. I'm the one with all things in my hands. I might be taking on the role of the lowliest of servants, but I'm still in control of events. This is another of the contradictions of this story. Jesus plays the role of a nobody, but he won't let Peter dictate the terms to him. And even though Jesus offers himself in a way that neither Peter nor any of the other disciples could ever have expected or imagined, that is how he presented himself. There was no alternative offer, and Peter had to be content to simply say yes. And whatever else this Holy Week has involved or meant for us, it has certainly been unfamiliar. The regular routines have been taken from us. Jesus is no longer offered to us in the programmes and narratives that we'd planned. But Jesus is no less present in this unfamiliar world. And I guess the question that we're all faced with is, will we let Jesus embrace us on his terms in this very unfamiliar encounter with the events of Holy Week and Easter? Jesus never conforms to our expectations. Jesus is always revealing contradictions. The servant king, the all-powerful foot washer. So in these contradictory, unexpected, troubling circumstances into which we've all been thrown, we may feel bewildered, but Jesus doesn't. It's us, not Jesus, who's fazed by the unexpected. Let me wash your feet, he says to his disciples. That's the question of the here and now. Whatever else has happened, whatever else will happen, whoever I am and whoever else is with you, will you let me wash your feet? Will you discover me and receive what I offer in this moment, even if it all feels a bit contradictory? So, we can either wait for a better and more familiar version of events to arrive, or we can accept the interruptions and jolts of now, and yet nonetheless believe that God's love for us is beyond measure. Our salvation is secure, and our example is to walk with humility and hope in the midst of our uncertainties and fear. And so we pray. Servant King, help me not to force you into any mould of my making, but to accept your presence, however it is revealed and discovered.